Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Larissa Dislar. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Galena Public Library in Galena, Illinois. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is our first event for our 10th annual Galena LitFest, which we have here in Galena every year. We feature a lot of great authors. A couple of the authors we have here tonight have been with us in the past, and we're happy to welcome them back. Before we get started, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat and we'll get to them. You'll find you are unable to unmute your mic. The program is being recorded and we will be posting it to our Galena Public Library YouTube channel within the next week or so, as well as a lot of our other LitFest events this year, so keep an eye on that. And we're also live streaming to Facebook, so anyone watching us on Facebook, you can leave a comment there and I can relay that question as well. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So with all of that out of the way, I will turn everything over to Lucy Tarabour here. She's a committee member of the soon-to-be famous Illinois Author Project.
Thanks, Larissa. Yes, I work at the Clarendon Hills Library, and I have been a member of this soon-to-be famous team almost since the beginning. I didn't quite come in till year 2, but I'll tell you a little bit about the project, and then we'll get started and see what's been going on with all of our winning authors. As many of you may know, the soon-to-be famous Illinois Author Project is entirely librarian conceived and run. Librarians volunteer their time to be judges and to read books by all the self and indie published authors that submit their work to us. And our goal from the beginning was really to shine a light on indie and self-published works, because libraries really didn't have a good way to figure out which ones should we put on our shelves and which ones shouldn't we. And because there were so many great ones out there, and because so many ebooks by indie and self-published authors were being sold, librarians knew they had to respond to this. So this was the response of a small group of librarians to start this contest 10 years ago. So we began with the self-published or indie published book contest in 2014. And then in 2019, we added a category for unpublished manuscripts. So we now have 2 contests going, one for the self-published books, one for unpublished manuscripts. And we're just so excited about all the great, wonderful stories that we've been able to read through this contest and that we've been able to introduce to our library patrons. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Before we get into the nitty-gritty questions, I just kind of want to check in with everybody and see what's been happening in your writing life since you won your award. Now, for some of you, that may be just a few months. For some of you, it's like 9 or 10 years. But just bring us up to date on what you've been writing. If there's something new you're working on that you'd like to highlight, we'd love to know all about it. And I think I'm going to ask Sarah to start because you're the newest. But I just thought that would be good for you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Roots, and thank you for having me here tonight. I won the manuscript contest in 2022 for my novel House Call. And since then, I got to work with an editor, which was one of the prizes for winning the manuscript contest, which was really great, and helped me see some ways that manuscript could be improved, and also just some general ways I could keep working on my writing. I think one of the main wonderful things I took from winning that contest was also just an increased sense of confidence in my writing, and not feeling quite like such an imposter when I would tell people I was a writer, and having librarians look at my work and say there's something here worth reading and sharing, gave me a lot of motivation to keep writing, which I'm so appreciative of. So I've been working on a new novel, which I just finished a very messy first draft of. My first manuscript was a mystery novel, and this one is also a crime thriller. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I love doing the first drafts. I'm not as great with the editing, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just been writing whenever I can.
Great, thanks. Who would like to jump in next? I'm not going to call on everybody. Just come on in.
I'll go.
Okay.
I'll introduce myself, Joanne Zienty, and I won sort of the inaugural award in 2014. And that was an enormous thrill because, as Sarah said, it really was validating to me as a writer to be recognized that my writing was worthy to be in a library and worthy to have me go out on the road and visit libraries and connect with readers through different programs. So that was wonderful. Since then, I've published a second novel. This one, my first novel, The Things We Say, was literary fiction, kind of a family drama, contemporary family drama. The second novel, Children of the Revolution, was dystopian speculative fiction, I guess is kind of the broader term for it. Set in the future when there is no United States and country is sort of now a protectorate around the Great Lakes. And that was a wonderful journey that connected me with biblioboards, which allowed me to be put into many, many, many libraries. And so that was very exciting. And I just finished a sequel to Children of the Revolution, continuing my main character's journey. It's called The Night Prophet. Right now it's with the book designer. So it'll be out sometime this year. So looking forward to that. And I've already started working on the final novel of the trilogy. I don't know why those things always seem to come in threes, but they do.
Thanks, Joanne.
I guess if we're going in chronological order, I'll jump in next. So I'm Michael Peck. My pen name is Michael Alan Peck. I won way back in 2015. The benefit, not to just keep echoing what everybody else said, but any writer knows that this is the case. The biggest benefit of winning the contest was just being able to answer the question, do I have any business doing this? So, yes, I have a copy of Microsoft Word or whatever else I'm using, and I can spell pretty well, but am I actually writing something that someone wants to read? And so winning the contest really was validation for that. And then actually, gave me a small fan base, but started me creating a reader base. And where I've gone from there is I've written 2 more novels in the series. So the first one was The Journeyman, and then I wrote books, The Margins and The Catalyst. I tend to go really long, so I don't turn out books very quickly. The second book in the series, in fact, is I think over 700 pages, something like that. So most of my books double as a self-defense device. And really just my plans from here are to keep working in this initial series. I have 2 more books planned. Real life interfered for about 1.5 years, so I haven't been writing, but the next steps are, and maybe other people can identify with this as well. The books got long enough that I had to hire somebody to do a series Bible, because I have to keep track of all of the details and characters that are going on. And I have a terrible memory. So that's the next step, and then it is diving into the next books and actually spending a lot more time marketing the existing ones.
Well, going on to the next year. Go to Geralyn.
I guess that's me, 2016. The Grassroots Trio, is that what we are? I am Geralyn Hesslau Magrady. I won the award in 2016 for my book Lines. Since then, I have worked, even though I have a sequel to that, or I don't know, I guess a continuation, kind of a family saga story, I have concentrated mostly on some poetry and essays that have been in a few anthologies. I had a poem in Writer Shed Stories, and I had a poem in Write City Review, and an essay in Writer Shed Stories. And then there are several other anthologies that I submitted my work to and had gotten published there. But what I'm very excited right now is that I do have a novella, and it is called When Walls Talk. It is another Chicago-based story because I'm a Chicago history buff and I'm a genealogist. So what a lot of people don't know is all the character names in lines are the names of my ancestors on my dad's side. And now in When Walls Talk, which takes place down on Taylor Street, all the characters take the names of my mom's ancestors. So it's a fun experience for me to write this, and I'm thinking that should be out by the end of this year as well. So I'm very excited about the next book. And then after that, I think I'm going to go back to lines because Livia's talking to me in my head again. So we'll see what happens.
Great. Thanks, Geralyn. Alina,
Yes,
you are just a slip of a thing, youngs, in terms of this contest. Alina won in 2023, correct?
it's 2022, officially, yeah. So I'm the winner of the author contest. Illinois. My name is Alina Rubin. I write historical fiction. I won with my very first book, A Girl with a Knife, which is about a young woman who wanted to be a doctor at the time when women could not do such things. So she disguises herself as a man to study medicine. Since then, I wrote a sequel about her called No Job for a Woman and a prequel, Hearts by the Sea. And last month, I published another novel, kind of took a character from the first book, took a life of its own, and I published Abigail Song last month. So now I have 3 novels and 1 novella published. And the contest gave so many opportunities for me to speak at libraries and senior centers and other venues. Last year, I went to the American Library Association and met the winners from other states. So that was very, very exciting.
Great, thank you. Well, one thing I've noticed is almost all of you have mentioned this is this business of writing a series or a trilogy or 5 books or whatever it turns out to be. And I'm curious, when you're writing something like that, do you have the entire arc of the story already worked out in your head before you begin, or do the characters kind of do things that lead you into a new story? And Sarah, I don't know if you're planning to continue working, in the same vein on your next book or not, but I'm interested in the sequel business. So
I don't. I mean, even now, I'm not sure how it's going to end because my characters do take over. I mean, it happened in my first book, and it happened certainly in Children of the Revolution, where you think as a writer, you're God, you're in control of your characters, but they do take on a life of their own. And, as Geralyn said, they do speak to you in your head, and you kind of have to follow where they go. So no, I personally don't have the arc completely. I mean, I have bits and pieces of it, but if Angel wants to go a different way, then I'm going to let her lead me in that direction.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Michael? You said you already know there are going to be 2 more books in your series.
Yeah, for me, I tend to a lot of writing for me is basically it's like going to the gym. I always tell myself I don't have to go work out. I just have to show up at the gym and work out clothes, and then while I'm there, I might as well exercise. Writing is the same thing for me, where I have to come up with a trick to trick myself out of all the fear. And for me, the fear tends to be come up with so many ideas that I can't justify saying that I can't write this thing because look at all the stuff I have to work with. So really, a lot of that is then just taking these reams of ideas, putting them in order. And, I have kind of just milestones for just beginning, middle, and end for these stories. And then where do those pieces fit into that? There's a lot of what writers talk about is plotters versus pantsers. And a plotter is someone who plans the story meticulously, and a pantser flies by the seat of their pants. And I tend to be somewhere in between. So the first book was based on a screenplay that I wrote. I knew how that was going to end, but had to flesh it out. these last two books, I knew about what would happen in the middle and about what would happen at the end. And as Joanne said, the characters really do kind of get up and start walking around on their own and talking. And so how I got to that middle and how I got to that end point were sort of a surprise to me. And then the same thing with the next books. I know where I want this initial series to be by the time I finish. I've got all of these pieces that I need to fit into place and the characters to carry out those pieces. And that's sort of the fun then is figuring it out as I go, because I think if it was too meticulously plotted, I would be bored at some point, and it would just seem like drudgery. That one of the biggest priorities for me is to make sure that writing fiction doesn't feel like my day job, because I already have one of those. So.
Well, and I find that, I mean, especially with the second book, The Night Prophet, I just found myself really loving my characters and really enjoying spending time with them. And, you know, I kind of can't wait until I get back in that relationship with them. You know, I'm just starting out on the third, but also still then working on the second in terms of some design things. And so I want to get back with them. I want to hang out with them. So I can't wait.
I now found myself writing two different series because I never anticipated Abigail to be serious. I thought it'll be a story, just kind of, I thought maybe a novella or Ida Magna, something like that. It became a full novel, and as I was finishing, I realized, no, there is room for a sequel. So I decided I'm just going to name it Book One and kind of leaving myself room. And then I kind of saw a dream where, like, I really saw what happens in the second book, and it was so vivid, like I was watching a movie, and I couldn't believe it because that was not what I was predicting. But I was like, oh my God, what I just saw, that's even better than what I thought before. So now I knew, like, okay, at least it's going to have a sequel. Maybe it will have more. We'll see what happens. And my original, I think I knew early on that so much would need to happen to Ella that it will be a series of books, but I have no idea how many.
Oh, cool. And Geralyn, I know you said that.
Yeah.
Liv.
Libby's talking to me. I think Lines was it has so much potential. It's Chicago history. So by ending in 1893, with so many different holes that I could fill in prior to 1893 and move forward, to me, it lends itself to the next generation, where I can do a family saga type of story and mesh in a ton of history that you don't even realize. What I think one of the greatest compliments that I had received on Lines, they were not all compliments, but the one that I always took to heart was we had no idea how much research went into that until we went back after it was finished, and we went back and started looking things up. It triggered some thoughts. Like, yeah, pretty much every page. There's something almost on every page that is researched in some way. So I enjoy that aspect, but it's a very time-consuming thing. And it also plays a part of, when do I stop? Just because it happened, does it have to be in the story? So I have to pick and choose and be careful of when I'm overdoing it with, the history, and it has to be a part of the story. Like, I thought Lines went well, but it does lend itself to the next book, So in my head, it could probably be broken down into 3.
Mm-hmm.
In my head. Livia says different things, but yeah.
And Sarah, I know you said your second book is also a detective story, a mystery. Is that correct? Or did I
yeah, it's more of a thriller than a mystery. So my first book was more of a straightforward detective mystery novel, and I had anticipated it being a series, and I definitely haven't ruled it out. But by the time I was done, I was feeling, I think with mysteries, there's a little bit of a formula to it, which is something I love about mysteries, both as a reader and a writer of the genre. But then I just kind of wanted to experiment with doing a form a little bit differently. So I decided to try something new. But like you were saying, Geralyn, whenever I go back to my first manuscript and I read Meg as the protagonist, I'm like, oh, I miss Meg. She's a great character. I'd love to spend more time with her, like you were saying, Joanne. So I think there definitely might be another book in the future.
That's neat. That's neat, the way your characters become your friends with them. There's a lot of different subject matter represented here. We've got dystopian, we've got historical fiction, and we've got mystery. What is it that makes your subject matter important to you? Why do you write what you write?
Well, mine is easy. It's a compilation of, well, I love Chicago history, I love writing, I love literature, but I also love genealogy. And I create stories for my ancestors, is basically what I'm doing. And I'll actually go to their grave sites and say, I hope you're okay with what I'm saying, because it's got your name. I have no idea who you were. But it's just this intriguing, taking all of my passions, and I get to express all of them at once. So for genealogy, I know I have an Uncle Al, but I didn't know his name was Alessandro Vittorio. And I love the name Vittorio. I'm like, Vittorio, hey, Uncle Al, that's pretty cool. And so all of a sudden, Vittorio has become one of my characters. And my main character in this second book, obviously all these Italian names are coming in when Walls Talk, coming soon to a bookstore near you, but the main character is Antonia, and we call her Tony, and that's because my grandfather is the only grandfather I knew, which was Antonio. And so all of these characters, even though they have nothing to do with my ancestry, they have stimulated in me, inspired in me, this love of family. So I think that comes through in all of my stories. So there's the Chicago history bent, which I love, and the idea of family themes. And yeah, I just think it's a wonderful expression of all the different passions I have in my life.
For me, my first book, The Mystery, it's a nurse who moves back to her hometown, and while going on a home visit to a patient, discovers that patient is dead, and it looks like an overdose, but she decides something doesn't add up and starts looking into it more. And I worked as a nurse for a number of years. And so I came to it really wanting to write a nurse character, both because I think there's not a lot of great representations of what nursing's really like in books and in movies now. And I just kind of wanted to honor nurses, all the nurses I'd worked with, who are so smart and so capable and so detail oriented, that I was like, they would be great detectives. And then I've always been a reader of mysteries from Nancy Drew up until now. So it's kind of an obvious fit for me.
And for mine, I didn't even know that I was writing in this genre until a reviewer mentioned it. Apparently, I've been writing metaphysical fantasy and didn't know. And mine takes place in a world that's populated both with real people and then invented characters, mythical characters from people's dreams, nightmares, TV shows, you name it. But in this world, the fictional characters are every bit as real as the quote unquote real people. And that's a theme that has fascinated me for a long time, and obviously other authors and creative types, everyone from Mary Shelley doing Frankenstein to Blade Runner, to you name it. And that does resonate with me, because if you spend so much time with these characters that you've invented, you do kind of fall into this trap of wondering, what do we owe them? How real are they? And how does that affect the person that I am? Because all of these characters that I've come up with really are at least a facet of myself. And I've been able to dig a lot deeper into that than I thought I would. Although that might not be evident to somebody reading the book. They just might be watching or reading about action and things blowing up and figure it's just a surface level story. So maybe I'm the only one who knows that I've gone that deep, but that's what I enjoy about it.
I guess I must be attracted to dysfunction because in my first book, the things we save, it was, essentially about a dysfunctional family and sort of the secrets and how it fell apart. And then, now I'm writing dystopian speculative where, although this is the thing about one person's dystopia is another person's utopia, depending on where you are in the hierarchy. So, where one person sees dysfunction, another person sees that it's, very functional, and this is the way the world should be. And, people, need their decisions made for them, and they shouldn't be making their own decisions. And so I guess I like to play around with speculative and questions. In the first book, it was, why would a woman keep physical artifacts that hurt her, that trigger bad memories? And, in the trilogy, it's more of, how can one person think of a society as utopian and another person obviously see it as dystopian, and what do we do about that? So.
When people ask me why I write historical fiction, I usually feel like historical fiction picked me. Like I just started seeing these visions, and they were obviously from a different time. A lot of them were on sailing ships. I didn't know that much about sailing. I didn't know much about medicine of the time. Kind of threw away all that, write what you know. I'm always writing about something I don't know it, but I have to do a lot of research. But also I really see everything I write very vividly, like I'm inside a movie or inside somebody's life, and I just kind of write what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I think to build on that, I think it was Stephen King who said that somebody asked him, what made you choose to write horror? And he said, what makes you think it was a choice? And I think a lot of us can relate to that. Is like you start hitting the keys, and sometimes you might be amazed at what comes out. You didn't actually consciously choose it.
Well, and I personally, I don't want to feel that I'm stuck writing in any particular genre. It's more the story, the question that interests me. So if somebody wants to label what I'm writing as one thing, and I feel maybe it's different, it doesn't make a difference to me. I mean, it is the story and the characters and the feeling of the journey that we're going to go on together.
Well, I'm going to switch things up a little bit and talk about more of the mechanics of publishing and writing and getting your books out there. As you know, the contest is for self/indie published books, and for Sarah, the unpublished manuscripts. And I am wondering what made you all decide to go that route instead of, the more traditional publishing route. And Sarah, I'm curious for you what your plans are for publishing your work. So anybody jump in on that?
Sure, I can start. I don't know, I guess is the short answer to your question. I'm actually very interested to hear the rest of your answers to this, because I do feel intimidated by the need to kind of self-promote and self-market when you go the indie route, which is not something that I would consider a strength of mine. So I've been kind of waiting on that. I did send my manuscript out a while ago to just a handful of agents and conversed with a few of them. It ultimately didn't go anywhere. And that was before I kind of worked with the editor. So I've been playing with the idea of trying to shop it out some more, or also learning more about the indie route. So I am still kind of debating.
And for myself, I mentioned before that the first book that I wrote was originally a screenplay. I was out in LA for a few years. I had an agent and I had a manager trying to break into the industry. And as I put it, the industry and I reached an amicable agreement that they didn't want me and I didn't want to be in it. But that experience with having to hand my ideas over to somebody else and constantly get approval and meet gatekeeper after gatekeeper, and then if it wasn't approved all the way up to the top, nothing happened with it. You were just left with a screenplay. Left me wanting more than ever to just basically control the destiny of my own creations. And so much of it is also about the intellectual property. I own all of my own IP. I'm not signing it over to anybody else or signing over a share of it just to get my work out there. And it definitely is a challenge to market yourself. But as I've said to my wife a number of times, I'd rather fail on my terms than succeed on theirs. And so far, that's worked for me.
Well, and I think, one, it's almost a full-time job to try to find an agent to begin with. And that takes away time from your writing, from your creative life. And I would often find that agents would when you are thinking of approaching them, they want to know who you're like. What writer are you already like? Because obviously their job is to make money and to make publishers money, and everyone wants to make money. So they might be looking for the next, you insert the author's name, whoever you want to insert. And I find that very hard to say that I'm like somebody, because I don't think that I am. I think I'm just me as a writer. And as Michael said, I mean, I think I like being in control of my work. I'm my harshest critic. This Night Prophet went through, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 edits. I mean, the first draft took a long time, but I tend to edit fast. So the next drafts went a lot faster, but I mean, maybe somebody could be harsher than me, but I don't know. I think I'm a pretty harsh critic. So as Sarah, as you said, I'm not really good at self-promotion myself, but also if you're a mid-list author at a major publishing company, you're pretty much going to have to do what a self-published author has to do, because they don't put the money behind you. They don't buy you the space on the Barnes and Noble bookshelf. So I like control. I do. What can I say? I'm a control freak. I think I said that when Michael won. In my little speech that I gave. I think I admitted it. I'm a control freak.
Well, I would say for lines leading up to that becoming published, self-published. First of all, I didn't even know I was writing a novel at the time. It was just these little vignettes of what did my ancestors' lives look like during the time of the Chicago fire. And then it started building and it turned into one. But I was very much into all of the Writer's Digest, free, online, fun stuff. And the October before, so it was October 2015, they had a platform challenge. And every day there was something else that you learned about. And it was blogging and interviewing and creating your own blog, creating your own website, creating a Facebook page for your author, an Instagram page. It was setting up an email system for all your fans. It was setting up 30 days of this. And actually one was to do an interview with an author. And I ended up choosing a Chicago author, David Berner, who is this amazing award-winning author. And it's through him that I actually learned about Soon to Be Famous on one of his podcasts. And it was just all of that leading up to it kind of gave me, okay, a presence before the book was even published, self-published. So I enjoyed that whole process. But I have to say it's incredibly time consuming. And I always thought that as my sons would get older, I would have more and more time for myself. And as they have gotten older, my life has become more and more chaotic. So for this next one, this is an up and coming publisher. They haven't, I'll be one of their first books that they publish. And I'm very intrigued by that whole concept of me meeting their criteria in the first place and me being one of their first books. So I'm very excited for the entire new experience of this. But time consuming wise, it's a lot. It's a real lot.
I early on kind of was researching what is traditional publishing like and wanted to speak to traditionally published authors and to India published authors. And I immediately found that people who are traditionally published often are frustrated, say that they've been looking for an agent for a long time, that they've been rejected many times, that they found one, published one book, and the second book, it's like they're starting all over again, have to find a new agent, new publishing house. Well, indie authors always seem so happy. So I thought I'll go with fish people who seem happier.
Yeah. Well, that's like, I mean, who gets to experience being one of the first books being published by this new little company? You know, Christopher Whisperings, I love the name of it too, but it's, you know, I've been impressed with the process so far, and I haven't felt let down yet. So, and I feel like I let the publishing company down more than they let me down at this point, because it's been a wonderful experience. But yeah, you do lose some control, but I don't feel like I've lost. I've gained more than I've lost, I think, in control of some things. So it's been a good experience for me so far. We'll see.
I'm going to throw something this is kind of from left field, but it's very much to do with writers. It's very much in the news. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about artificial intelligence, AI. And, you know, there's talk of, well, you could have AI write a novel a la Allen Peck, and take all your work and somehow create something new. And I'm just wondering if you feel like that is, first of all, is that really possible? Are you concerned about it? Can you think of any good uses? Are there any good uses for AI to help you in your writing process?
So I'll jump in. And you know, my day job involves content editorial and marketing as well. And so, you know, I think I see through a lens of that where AI can be a helpful tool. But the way that I usually put it is AI, to me, the best that it's going to do is just do something that you were going to do anyway, but do it for you. And so, and I still haven't, you know, been using it for that type of thing, or maybe to help come up with some sort of artwork or that type of thing. But to me, first of all, if you're going to use AI to do your writing for you, then I don't know why you want to be a writer. There are a lot more rewarding things you could probably do than have artificial intelligence do it. And then also, I think what a lot of people tend to be skipping past, and you're seeing these legal battles starting already, and Christine Catherine Rush writes a lot about this, that whatever they're using to train AI also is copyrighted material. And so you're now having people who are kind of reverse engineering it and figuring out, you know, how easy it is on the art side, for example, to give it the right prompts and say, listen, I want you to do an animated plumber for me. And before you know it, you've got Mario from the games. And so you can start to see how much copyrighted material has gone in there. So I do think if you just sit there and say, yeah, write me a novel similar to a Stephen King novel, if you go and make a lot of money with that, I'm going to bet that Stephen King's going to have something to say about it, as will his attorneys. So I think that there's a lot that has to be worked out here.
I mean, I love the writing process. I love the struggle, and it is a struggle, but I embrace the struggle. Last April, Jim Bauman of the Daily Herald who writes a column every week about on writing, and he challenged his readers to figure out which essay was written by AI and which was written by him. Now, it was on the topic of gerunds, the verbs that end in ing. And he posted it in the Sunday paper and then said, next week I'll tell you, challenge yourself. So read, and then I took that, and I'm a teacher, I'm a school librarian, so I did it with my 5th graders this past fall. And the thing about it is, and not all of the kids noticed, but the AI created, and he said, I want a funny essay on the use of gerunds. So the AI program spit out, which was just obviously joke after joke after joke involving gerunds. Whereas he wrote, and you could see and read the human perspective in there about, and the kids, my 5th graders pointed out, well, wow, he used the word eating 5 times. And I said, well, why do you think he did that? And then, I had students who say, well, he's emphasizing that he really loves to eat. And that's how that was funny. So the AI was really just compiling jokes about gerunds, whereas the human, the writer, was putting his humanity into the essay. And I mean, I've used Bard, which is now actually Gemini, to write a very short essay for my 4th graders on different topics in Illinois history. And then we've had an influx of Russian and Ukrainian students, and I've used it to translate. So, and it did it like that. So there are wonderful uses for AI for teachers, but for creative writing, no, thank you. It's like I said, it's great if you put in a prompt and it's going to compile an essay for you, and like if you want just really quick facts, but at the same time, you better go back and fact check it if you're going to actually use those facts, because AI can have what are called hallucinations, where they spit out things that aren't true. I love the way they call them hallucinations. So anyway, I love writing. It's a struggle. I love it. And I embrace the struggle.
I like to say that the other AI is authentic intelligence rather than artificial. And it's just that authenticity, there's something missing. There's just something missing. If you're going to do it, do it. And take your own ownership and take your pride along with, the highs and lows that come with whatever may come. But I don't believe that there's any place really for AI in writing. And even with my own students, I always say that, instead of artificial intelligence, give me authentic, because that's what I'm truly looking for. And that's how you're going to build your mind. You don't want to have someone else do your work for you. Or if you do, then you're going to do the AI artificial. But my hope is that you're going to be an authentic writer. And right now I'm teaching all speech public speaking classes. And when they're writing their own speeches, this is something that comes up. And I said, I need to hear your authentic voice. And the first speech they do is storytelling, where they have to tell a story in present tense that tells me something about them, not my name is, my siblings are, I come from, but an actual story. You start with the first line, I am in the emergency room with my dad, and continue that story for about 2 minutes. And that gives me an authentic story. That's not going to come from artificial intelligence. And from there, we build our other speeches. And hopefully right off the bat, they know this has to come from the heart and from their heads. But yeah, I don't do anything with AI in my classroom. That's artificial. Only authentic.
Lucy, the one thing I would jump in and say, though, is that I think where AI can come in handy is the other part of what we're talking about in terms of being authors. It can help, I think, or at least we could be trying it with marketing, with writing blurbs, with writing captions. If you really want to come up with a bunch of different variations to test, and testing is a very important part of it. and also with coming up with some graphics and some illustrations. But again, you have to be careful with that because no one wants to sit here and say, I'm a writer and I don't want anyone stealing my ideas. But you know what? Go do some art in the style of this guy who I'm now going to rip off and, use for my marketing. But so hypocrisy, can be a problem if you're not aware of it. But I do think there's something there for marketing and that type of thing on the business side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's good for writing blurbs. You mentioned writing a serious Bible. I have used it. It took me one afternoon to come up with my serious Bible. So yeah, it could be handy for things that that are kind of manual and not very interesting, but I would never wanted to take over writing because coming up with a story and writing it is what I love.
All right. Well, here's a dystopian speculation. So, okay, everyone just goes and uses Gemini or ChatGPT, or there's some other ones that are actually specifically focused on writing, which I discovered from my 5th grader who was using it. So, okay, you just go to your computer or your tablet and you go to the AI and you type in your prompt and it spits out a short story or a novel for you. So, okay, then what is the point of a writer? Or what is the point of a library? It's like a story vending machine. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's
Lucy,
kind of like
what would happen to library?
I know. It's kind of like when people will say, well, you don't need a library. We have Google.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to stop here and ask Larissa if we want to go and ask and get some questions from people who are listening.
There are a couple of questions in the chat window. If anyone else would like to drop more questions in there, go ahead and do so. Way back in the beginning, Joanne, you mentioned BiblioBoard. Do you want to talk a little bit about what BiblioBoard is?
Sure. It's actually it's also called Lyricist. I discovered it after I won. It was actually a couple of years, I think, Lucy, right? Because then I submitted my second one to the contest, and then I got an email saying, "Oh, you've been invited to post your work on BiblioBoard." And it was really just starting up at the time where they were collecting ebooks and then marketing it to public libraries. And you got a share of the profits or royalties from allowing them to have your work on BiblioBoard. And I said, okay, sure, why not? And I did notice that, I had a ton of libraries get my first book, but I think that's because it, won and they got the print version of it. Whereas with the second, it was really more the ebook. And it's like all across the country of all these libraries who subscribe to BiblioBoard. And at the end of the year, I get a check or deposit in my account. It's not enough to live on, so I'm not going to quit my day job. But it's so, and I still, Lucy, correct me if I'm wrong, but do they still also vet for soon to be famous or not anymore?
Yes, they do. There may be some changes afoot for next year, but yes, they have been doing that. And it's a great tool for just more discoverability for your novel. That is kind of, the library does the work, by buying this. Well, BiblioBoard is the platform, and the library will buy the collection and make it available to you. So, yeah, I know that you're not going to get rich off the royalties, but a little icing on the cake.
Well, and for me, it's really just knowing that my book is out there. I mean, I sometimes I go on WorldCat and I look at the libraries I know it's ego, whatever. But, you know, Fairbanks, Alaska Library had a copy of my book. And I was like, whoa, it was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, and I just recently got another email from them saying, oh, you can go ahead and submit more of your work to them. And I'm going to, once the second, the Night Prophet is actually, you know, done with design process, because I don't have a book cover for it yet. So I want to make sure I have a book cover before I submit that. And
If you are interested in hearing more about Biblioboard, which is now, it was bought out by a company called Lyricist, so you might hear both names. I see in the chat that one of my cohorts, Jeffrey Fisher, has put in the website for Biblioboard, so you can get some information about it. The soon-to-be famous contest hooked up with Biblioboard, I think maybe 2 or 3 years in. And that was just another thing that we could offer to people who were submitting their work, that there was this availability of this Biblioboard platform to just get your work out there a little more. Thank you, Jeffrey, for putting that in.
And I'll also mention an extension of Biblioboard is inky.org, which is the self-publishing engine. So you can actually use that to self-publish. As part of LitFest, we'll be having a program on that on Thursday. Anna Bem from Rails, who's an e-content specialist, will be explaining how to use it as an author and a reader. So go to our website if you're interested in that at galenalibrary.org. And another question here from Ron. Ron is wondering what kind of other writing you might want to try, or genres you might want to dabble in.
I'd love to do a psychological thriller. So I'm thinking that might be sort of, I mean, the book that I just finished, even though it's dystopian speculative, I think it also has some aspects of a psychological thriller. So I think I'd really love to try that.
I tried to write a romance novel, but this is when I discovered I really am a crime novel writer, because I got like 50 pages in and I was like, there's no dead body. I don't know how to move this plot forward. So that's still something I think I'd like to try at some point, like a really fun, light romance. I just am not sure how to do it quite yet.
And for me, as I said, I didn't even know what genre I was writing when I wrote these first books, and so I kind of don't think of it that way as in terms of what genre that I want to tackle next. It's just, what story do I find myself wandering into, and then sometimes it's not until I'm finished that I even could begin to tell you what I've written, which is very helpful when trying to shelve the book for the librarians there.
I often speak at the senior living centers, and I always, when I come there, for some reason, I'm thinking that's a great place to set a cozy mystery. So, because if something happens, nobody will believe that it's a murder. People will think it's natural causes. And also, there's a lot of could be a little romance, could be people finding love late in life, could be that they are fighting for getting a library or getting better life for themselves. So I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and they're avid readers, so they would be reading about themselves, so they'd be excited. I also have an idea, and I can't figure out what genre it is. It's the closest to thing that I can think of it is the movie Inside Out, where things are happening in the girl's brain. So this is what's happening in the writer's brain. So the characters are coming alive. I don't know what genre that is, maybe YA, but I hope to write that story as well.
I know, so many stories, so little time.
All right, and Andy is asking, for those of you who have written more than one book, how long did it take you from after writing your first book to writing your second book, and what distractions kept you from finishing your second book sooner?
I find that I'm getting faster at it. My first book took a long time. And then the second, it was about half the time. And then this third one, you know, 2.5, and that includes the editing, all the editing. So my challenge is, you know, I have a full-time job, so I do most of my writing on the weekends, in the mornings, or over I teach, so over summer break or spring break or winter break. When I get home from my full-time job, I'm exhausted. So I really find it very hard to write in the evening. So that tends to slow me down, but I think in general, I'm getting faster. Maybe I'm getting better at it.
I think for me, what takes so long is the fact that it's not just the time, it's getting into the zone. And so like I can say, okay, I'm gonna put Friday to the side for writing. Sometimes that doesn't happen because Friday morning I've got a to-do list in my head for Saturday, or whatever the case may be. I've got lesson plans that I have to do. There are other things that are going on that it's not just setting the time, it's getting into the zone to do it. Sometimes that's a place, sometimes that's a time of day, but I think that's my biggest challenge, is just getting into the zone of writing, because once I'm there, I can go for hours and hours once I'm into the zone of it. So I think that's the biggest issue for me. My first book took forever to write, but I didn't realize I was writing a book. So I guess that was part of it. And there was so much research. And I think that's one of the things that is a problem with me too. I'll be writing the story. I'm like, oh, wait, when did that happen? I want a few more details about that. And then all of a sudden I go into that little hole of the internet hole of going through one thing after another. And all of a sudden 2 hours have passed. I'm like, okay, what was the detail I was looking for? And then all of a sudden I go back to it. So it's historical fiction is just one of those things where it just leads you into so many different, all the way up until the end, until the day that I pressed publish on that, on lines. I was researching little things all the time. So it just takes a while.
Yeah, and I think with any book too, I mean, I'm very concerned about plausibility. So I do a lot of research, even though I'm not writing historical fiction.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I will go down those rabbit holes too, and because I'm a born researcher as well. So it's like, yeah. Stop.
And for myself, I sort of combining those first two answers, I think maybe I'm getting a little faster. The problem is I also keep going longer. So those two things balance out. The first book was about 90,000 words, and then the second one was 180, and then the third one was about 100. And considering just like everybody else, I have a full-time job and they're not making any more weekends that I know of, it just keeps taking me longer because the story gets bigger and the books get longer. But that's part of the fun. I'm not one of the you know, there is a school of especially self-published authors where it really is about publishing fast on a regular schedule, and I knew from the very beginning that wasn't going to be me.
Yeah, for me, I had a baby right around the time I won the contest, so that was the distraction that kept me from finishing my second book sooner. And I find, like many of you, I just have little bits and pieces of time here and there. It's hard for me to have, like, you know, I'd love to have like a month-long writing retreat where all I do is write, but that's not anywhere in my future that I can see. So something that helps me to get in the zone is if I can do just a little bit every day, that helps me stay in the story. If I go too long without trying to add to it, I have to remember where I am in the story. I have to remind myself who my characters are, and I kind of lose motivation. So I definitely don't follow this advice, but I think if you can do a little bit every day, that really helps to get it done.
I tend to be pretty disciplined. I write every day, 5:30 till 7 a.m. in the mornings before my job. And so I wrote like a quarter of the sequel while my first book was with the editor. So in my novella, I wrote like at the same time as I was writing Abigail. Like I would just kind of say, okay, on the weekends I write for 3 hours, you know, my Abigail, and 1 hour for Hearts by the Sea. So that's kind of how I divided the time and managed to do several books in span of 2 years.
What's that like?
I don't know. It's my best time of the day is to write it, before work, and then most of the day during work I'd be like, I wish I could come back to what I was writing. But like after my job is in IT and a lot of meetings, 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm no longer in the mood to write. Not, but I do spend. But that's the time if there is a chance, I spend time researching or doing something for marketing for my website, for book funnel or other things, and write my newsletters. I write newsletters for myself and for one corporation of writers. So I usually do task for that in the evenings.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. So if anyone has anything, speak now or forever hold your peace.
While you're waiting for people to speak now, I'm going to do a short commercial for our contest. The unpublished manuscript contest for this year is underway right now, and we're accepting entries until through February 29th. So anybody who's out there working on your manuscript, go to soon-to-be-famous.info and think about submitting it.
Thank you, Lucy. Soon to Be Famous is such a great resource for authors in Illinois, and thank you all for being here. I will just real quick say that we have a couple more programs for LitFest this week. To do February is our Indie Author Month, so we have an indie author here on Saturday to talk about the small press that she started, Whistle Stick Press, and again the program on inky.org on Thursday. And then we have a whole slate of mystery-related programming for March, including another author panel and a workshop on abnormal psychology and fiction. And all of those will be offered virtually. So I thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.